It is the greatest miracle in the Old Testament. A sea splitting in two, walls of water standing firm like glass, 2 million people walking through on dry ground. For thousands of years, this event has defined the faith of millions. But if you walk into a modern university classroom or open a secular history book today, you will hear a very different story. Scholars and skeptics will tell you that Moses never parted the deep waters of the Red Sea. They claim the Hebrew text actually refers to the Reed Sea, a shallow, marshy swamp near the Suez Canal. They argue that the Israelites simply waded across a lake that was perhaps knee-deep at low tide. They tell us there was no wall of water, no ocean floor, and no miracle. But this theory has a massive, fatal flaw. If the water was only knee-deep, how did it drown the entire elite army of Pharaoh, including his chariots and horses? You cannot drown an empire in a swamp. We are not looking for a marsh. We are looking for a place where the impossible happened, a place deep enough to swallow an army, yet passable for a nation. If you believe that the Bible is a record of true history and you want to support this investigation into the truth, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like this video. It helps us get this message out to more people. To find the real crossing site, we have to stop looking where tradition tells us to look and start looking where the Bible tells us to grow. For centuries, maps have placed the crossing at the Gulf of Suez near Egypt. But the Bible gives us a specific set of clues that point much further east to the Gulf of Aqaba. The text says that Pharaoh looked at the Israelites and said, "They are entangled in the land. The wilderness has shut them in." In the traditional northern locations, the terrain is flat and open. There is no way to be shut in. But if you follow the ancient trade routes across the Sinai Peninsula, you arrive at a massive beach called Nuweiba. Here, the geography perfectly matches the biblical description of a trap. Imagine the scene. To the north and south, mountains rise sharply from the water, blocking any escape. To the west, the winding, narrow canyons they just marched through are now filled with the dust of approaching Egyptian chariots. And to the east, the vast, deep expanse of the Red Sea. They were literally hemmed in by stone and water. This wasn't a mistake in navigation, it was a divine setup. God brought them to the one place on the map where human escape was impossible, so that the deliverance would be undeniable. But looking at the surface of the water, another problem arises. The Gulf of Aqaba is a deep rift valley, a massive crack in the Earth's crust. How could millions of people, along with children and livestock, cross a canyon that drops thousands of feet down? The answer lies hidden beneath the waves. If you look at a depth chart of the Gulf of Aqaba, you will see a terrifying drop. This body of water is part of the Great Rift Valley system. In most places, the shoreline drops almost vertically into an abyss that is nearly 6,000 feet deep. It is a jagged, underwater canyon. Even if the water was removed, crossing it would be like trying to march 2 million people down the face of the Grand Canyon and up the other side. It would be physically impossible. But this is where the specific location of Nuweiba becomes critical. Oceanographic surveys have revealed a geological anomaly right at this spot. Extending out from the beach is a massive underwater land bridge. It acts like a natural causeway, stretching all the way across the Gulf to the shores of Saudi Arabia. While the depths to the north and south plunge into the abyss, this bridge forms a gentle, wide slope. It is estimated to be several miles wide, easily large enough for the Israelites to walk in a broad column rather than a single file line. The slope is gradual, calculated at about 6 degrees, a grade that is comfortable for people, wagons, and livestock to traverse. The prophet Isaiah seems to reference this exact feature when he writes that God is the one who makes a way in the sea and a path in the mighty waters, not just a split in the liquid, but a path on the solid ground. It appears that God did not just part the water, he had prepared the ground beneath it eons in advance, waiting for this precise moment in history. But a road is just geology unless an event actually happened there. If the biblical narrative is true, then this underwater bridge should be a graveyard. It should be scattered with the remains of Pharaoh's elite force, chariots, weapons, and horses that were crushed when the waters returned. Wood and flesh decompose quickly in the ocean, but what about the metal? What about the wheels? For years, divers and researchers exploring this underwater land bridge have documented strange, unnatural formations scattered across the seabed. Corals in the Red Sea typically grow in organic, random clumps, but here they have found corals growing in distinct geometric shapes. They appear as perfect circles, sometimes standing on their side, connected by what looks like an axle. These are not random formations. Marine biologists know that coral needs a structure to grow on. It appears these corals have encrusted the remains of ancient chariot wheels, preserving their shape long after the wood has disintegrated. Some of these formations reveal 4, 6, and 8-spoked wheels, a design that specifically matches the chariots used by the Egyptian dynasties of that era. Twisted shapes resembling cabs and axles lie scattered like debris on a highway. These are the silent witnesses of the Exodus, preserved in stone and coral at the bottom of the sea, marking the final resting place of the army that dared to fight against God. But the evidence is not limited to the ocean floor. On the beach at Nuweiba, discovered lying partially in the water, was a massive column of red granite. It stood out completely from the local landscape. For years, its origin was a mystery, until a matching column was discovered on the opposite shore in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi column reportedly bore inscriptions in ancient Hebrew containing the words Mizraim, Egypt, Solomon, Edom, Death, Pharaoh, Moses, and Yahweh. These markers suggest that King Solomon, who reigned centuries after the Exodus, knew exactly where the miracle took place. He erected these twin pillars on opposite shores as a permanent memorial to the crossing. The pillar on the Egyptian side has since been moved by authorities, but it stood for centuries as a solitary sentinel, marking the spot where a nation walked through the sea. This brings us to the event itself. We must stop imagining a shallow tide receding. The Bible describes something far more terrifying and majestic. It says a strong east wind blew all night. The waters were not just pushed back. The text says they were congealed and stood up as a wall on their right and on their left. Imagine walking onto that land bridge in the middle of the night. To your sides, towering walls of dark, churning water held back by an invisible hand. Under your feet, the dry ground of the seabed. It was the only path through the abyss. God did not build a bridge over the water. He forced the ocean to reveal the bridge that was hidden beneath it. And when the Egyptian army charged in after them, the laws of physics snapped back into place. The walls collapsed, and the trap was sprung. Why does this matter to us? Because the geography teaches us about the character of God. God did not lead the Israelites to the Red Sea by mistake. He deliberately led them to a dead end. He brought them to a place where they were helpless, where their own strength could not save them. Perhaps you feel like you are at your own Red Sea right now. The enemy is behind you, an obstacle is before you, and you feel completely trapped. This story reminds us that when we see a dead end, God sees a highway. He doesn't always take us around the problem. Often, He makes a way directly through it. If they crossed at the Gulf of Aqaba, it leads to one final, earth-shattering conclusion. It means they stepped out of the sea not into Egypt, but into the ancient land of Midian, modern-day Saudi Arabia.
This implies that the real Mount Sinai is not the tourist site in the Sinai Peninsula, but a restructed mountain in Saudi Arabia with a blackened, scorched peak that you are not supposed to see. We will investigate this forbidden mountain in our next episode. If this journey has sparked something in you, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next investigation. And I want to ask you a question for the comments. If this evidence is true, why do you think it has been ignored or dismissed for so long by mainstream history? I would love to read your thoughtful responses below. Keep seeking the truth.